secrets explode. The court devours the careless. Step in. Wonderland Unlocked, Series 11. The Royal Court. Only the ruthless survive.
There is something uniquely destabilizing about rules that move. Not rules that are harsh, not rules that are strict, but rules that shift depending on who is watching, who is asking, and who stands to benefit. Welcome back to Wonderland Unlocked. This is Series 11, The Royal Court, where we step inside the invisible power structures that shape workplaces, leadership dynamics, and the psychological landscapes that we navigate every day. In this court, there are titles, alliances, silent hierarchies, and unspoken contracts. Some rulers lead with fear, some with charm, some with strategy, and some twist the rules. Today, we're talking about the rule twister. The supervisor who enforces policies inconsistently, who applies standards selectively, who creates arbitrary barriers for some while quietly removing them for others. The leader who claims structure matters until structure becomes inconvenient. This episode is about systemic inconsistency, about manipulation disguised as flexibility, about protecting yourself when fairness becomes conditional. Let's step into the court. In every functional system, rules serve a purpose. They create predictability. They establish boundaries. They protect against bias. They allow people to understand what is expected and how to succeed. Rules are not meant to be weapons. They are meant to be frameworks. But in the royal court, ruled by a rule twister, politics are no longer neutral. They become tools of power. One day, a deadline is sacred. The next, it's flexible. One employee is reprimanded for a minor oversight. Another commits the same infraction and receives silence or worse, praise. Procedures are cited selectively, exceptions are granted quietly, and explanations, if offered at all, are vague. Each situation is different. You have to use discretion. That's just how leadership works. At first, you question yourself. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you missed context. Maybe there's information you don't have. But over time, a pattern forms. And patterns are harder to dismiss. The rule twister thrives in ambiguity. They rely on the gray space between written policy and applied policy. Their authority strengthens when employees are unsure of where the lines truly are. Because when the rules are unstable, people become cautious, and cautious employees are easier to control. This is not always overt manipulation. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's unconscious. Sometimes the rule twister genuinely believes they are being situationally fair. But fairness without transparency becomes favoritism. Flexibility without consistency becomes unpredictability, and unpredictability erodes trust. Emotionally, working under a rule twister feels like walking across a floor that may or may not hold your weight. You scan for cues constantly, you replay conversations in your mind, you double-check emails before sending them, you hesitate to take initiative because you're unsure whether autonomy will be praised or punished that day. You begin to notice your body responding before your mind does, a tightening in your chest when you see their name pop up, a spike of anxiety before performance reviews, a hyper-awareness in meetings, watching how others are treated. This is what inconsistent leadership does. It activates vigilance. Your nervous system starts reading leadership as a variable threat, not because they always are aggressive, but because they are unpredictable. And unpredictability is destabilizing. Over time, something shifts inside you. You stop focusing solely on doing good work. You start focusing on avoiding arbitrary consequences. And that shift is exhausting. How exactly does a rule twister operate? Often it begins with selective enforcement. Policies exist, attendance rules, project protocols, communication expectations, but enforcement varies depending on personal relationships or internal politics. One employee is required to submit detailed weekly reports. Another, favored for their loyalty, is not. One team must follow a rigid approval train. Another bypasses it with a casual hallway conversation. Then there's reinterpretation. A policy that once meant one thing now means something else. Expectations evolve without formal communication. Standards shift mid-project. What was acceptable last quarter becomes grounds for reprimand this quarter. And when questioned, the answer is rarely direct. It's about professional judgment. You need to be adaptable. You're overthinking it. The message underneath is clear. I decide what the rules mean today. This creates an uneven playing field where performance alone does not determine outcomes. Alignment with the rule twister's preference does, and that's when fairness dissolves. So how do you navigate this? First, awareness without self-blame. Recognizing systemic inconsistency is not complaining. It's a pattern recognition. Start observing objectively. Track when rules are enforced. Notice when they are waived. Identify recurring discrepancies. Patterns reveal whether this is an isolated incident or an embedded dynamic. Second, documentation. When rules shift, written records become your anchor. Save emails, summarize verbal instructions and follow-up messages. Clarify expectations in writing. Documentation transforms ambiguity into something tangible. It protects you from revisionist narratives. But here's what often happens in inconsistent systems. When outcomes go poorly, history gets rewritten. That's not what I said. You misunderstood. That was always the expectation. Documentation protects you from being positioned as the problem. Third, proactive clarification. Instead of challenging emotionally, seek clarity strategically. Just to confirm for future reference, is this the updated expectation for everyone? Can we standardize this process so I can ensure consistency? Framing questions around alignment and professionalism forces transparency. It signals that you are attentive without being confrontational. Sometimes that alone stabilizes behavior. But what if it doesn't? What if the rule twister continues bending policies, rewarding loyalty over merit, and using discretion as a shield? Then you must focus on your sphere of control. Build relationships outside the rule twister's immediate influence. Cultivate allies who value consistency. Increase your visibility with stakeholders who operate with integrity. The more diversified your professional network, the less dependent you are on one unstable authority figure. Avoid dependency traps. Do not allow one inconsistent supervisor to control all access to opportunity. Seek cross-functional collaboration. Volunteer for initiatives that expand your exposure beyond a single gatekeeper. The rule twister's power weakens when your success is not entirely tethered to their approval. There's also an internal boundary to protect. In inconsistent systems, it is tempting to adapt by twisting yourself, to mirror the ambiguity, to bend your own standards to survive. But that comes at a cost. When you compromise your integrity to match instability, you lose your anchor. You become reactive. You operate from fear rather than clarity. Instead, let your consistency become your stability. Follow written policy, communicate transparently, maintain ethical standards even when enforcement is selective. You cannot control how the rule twister interprets the rules, but you can control how you show up. And that steadiness matters, not just professionally, but psychologically. Sometimes the hardest realization is this: the rule twister is not an anomaly. They are often a system of a broader culture that tolerates inconsistency, that rewards political maneuvering, that confuses discretion with dominance. And at some point, you must evaluate whether the court itself aligns with your long-term values. Is this a temporary challenge you can navigate strategically? Or is it a structural misalignment that will continue draining you? There is no weakness in deciding that unpredictability is not a sustainable environment for you. Clarity is not disloyalty, it is self-preservation. Before we close, I want you to reflect. Have you experienced shifting standards, selective enforcement, expectations that change without warning? Did you internalize it as personal failure, or did you recognize it as systemic inconsistency? The rule twister thrives when employees doubt themselves, when they assume confusion is incompetence, when they chase approval inside a game with hidden rules. But once you see the pattern, something changes. You stop scrambling. You start stabilizing. You stop personalizing. You start strategizing. And that is power. And this is Wonderland Unlocked. This is Series 11, The Royal Court. In a kingdom where rules may twist, you are allowed to stand firm. You are allowed to document. You are allowed to ask for clarity. You are allowed to protect your professional dignity. And you are allowed to decide whether the court you serve honors fairness or manipulates it. Until next time, stay aware of the structures around you. Stay anchored in your integrity. And remember, when the rules shift beneath you, your clarity can still hold you steady.